Welcome to the Create a Life You Love podcast, the go-to podcast for people who are called to make a positive impact through the power of coaching. You'll hear encouraging stories from coaches sharing their journeys and their lessons learned along the way, tips from top experts who help coaches thrive in their life and their business, and so much more. So if you're ready to create a business and a life of impact that you love, let's get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of the Create a Life You Love podcast. I am one of your hosts, Chantel Cox. I'm an author, a speaker, a transformation neurocoach, and a certified life purpose coach.
And I am Gwen White, a quantum human design specialist and positive intelligence coach.
Together, Gwen and I are on a mission to dramatically transform and create community in the coaching industry by supporting you in saying no to all of those complicated cookie cutter strategies that just lead to burnout, and instead empower you to say yes to simplification with a focus on alignment, service, and impact.
And with our combined expertise and experience, we are here to help you create aligned momentum in both your business and your life.
Absolutely. So this is one of my favorite parts. We get to give a big shout out to one of our listeners. And so their username on Apple was EJ Lester, and they left us a beautiful review saying, just found you guys and loving everything about this podcast. Lots of great info, easy to understand, and a great vibe. Can't wait to listen to more episodes.
Thank you so much, EJ. We are so delighted you found us and that you're enjoying Create a Life You Love. And before we get going today, a quick shout out to our sponsor, the Create a Life You Love membership, an active and engaged community of passionate and purpose-driven coaches who are up-leveling in the most amazing and powerful ways to increase their knowledge, momentum, and impact. So for more information, and to apply, check out createalifeyoulovecoaching.com/membership today.
Yay. And as always, any links we mentioned throughout the episode will be in the show notes. So never fear. All right. So I am so excited to introduce you all to Julia Trehane. You may remember her from a previous episode where she let me record a coaching conversation with her. And so you might recall some of the things she's working on in her business. And now we get to have her on and share her expertise. So Julia is an eating disorder recovery specialist, coach, and host of the Fly to Freedom podcast. So after struggling with anorexia and orthorexia, you'll have to tell me about what that is, Julia, but you struggled with those things for almost 40 years. You sought out help outside of the traditional medical routes and found an incredible recovery coach who supported her every step of the way until she found her own freedom and peace from her eating disorder. And now Julia is passionate about helping others reach their own wonderful future freedom and learn to love themselves again. Through her coaching and her podcast, Julia provides support and guidance to those on their own eating disorder recovery journey. So welcome, Julia. We're so excited to have you. How are you today?
Oh, thank you. I'm really, really good. I must apologize though if you heard the naughty dog in the background having a quick woof there. Hopefully she'll be quiet for the rest of the time.
You know, we live in the real world, so
Exactly, and we love dogs.
Yes.
Oh yeah, she's good, really. But thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. It's an honor to be with you girls.
Fantastic. Yes. We're so excited to have you as well. So excited. I'm really interested in learning more about your area of specialty, but first and foremost, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your journey to creating a life that you love through your coaching, through your podcast. Who do you serve? What got you started?
Oh, well, where to start? So who I serve is primarily women, but not exclusively, who have been living with an eating disorder for a long time, who think that there isn't really any hope left for them and that they just have to continue existing in this half-life and struggling with the eating disorder because that's all they've lived and it's all they've known, and they don't think there's any way forwards. And I just really, really want to raise awareness that there is a way forwards and there is a way to recover. And you can do it, even if the medical profession have said that you can't. You can. And I'm living, breathing, joyful proof that it's possible. So yeah, that's who I serve. And honestly, it lights me up so much. It's just incredible to see how much change you can bring to somebody's life when they start to believe in themselves, and I suppose come home to the love that we were all born with for ourselves. And it's just beautiful. It really is. And oh, it's so freeing. It's just, I just can't describe it. It almost brings me to tears every time I think of it. It's just incredible.
Wow. That's
And
beautiful,
how,
Julia. Yeah, I would love to hear about your journey to getting to this place.
oh, okay. So that started really, really young. One of my earliest memories is of being 4 years old, and I was playing with another little girl who was also called Julia, who lived in my road. Because we were the same age and had the same name, she was called Little Julia and I was called Big Julia. And I wasn't big, I was just a week older than her. So that's where the name came from. But I just remember it felt wrong, and it felt like it was bad for some reason, and that being big was wrong. And so that was sort of started my awareness of feeling, I suppose, not good enough, and not like I didn't fit in and I wasn't right. And that continued throughout my childhood. I had a very traditional father who was very much, no emotion was allowed to be shown. And yeah, I suppose you just had to, it was all about what other people would think all the time, which was just the way he was brought up and what he knew. So it was, I learned very young that showing emotion was bad. And so I didn't. And I also just tried so hard to please, but he was a very, very critical man. And so nothing ever did pleased him, and I never felt good enough. He was kind of along the lines of children should be seen but not heard, but almost not seen as well. And I realized by about the age of 9 that a way to not be seen was to stay small. And then to stay small, you just ate less. That was what my child brain decided was going to work. And by the time I reached the age of about 11, I realized that eating less numbed your emotions as well as kept you small. So this was like a massive win. I felt like I had like a superpower. I could stay small, I could be invisible, and I didn't have to feel any feelings. So I was like winning at life then. I thought I was like almost like on a different level. It was an amazing feeling, and feeling empty felt like receiving a trophy, you know, it felt like winning a race. It was quite addictive, if I'm honest. And so this carried on throughout my teenage years. I became a master at hiding it and lying and deceiving my family and wearing lots of jumpers and things to hide my size, lots of baggy clothes and stuff. There were questions asked and there were repercussions. I did kind of weight restore at about the age of 15, 16 a bit, but only weight, not fully, just enough for people to stop worrying and asking questions. And in my head, nothing was better, that nothing was mended at all. I left home, not in a good way, at 16. And when I was away from home and living, I kind of lived in a shared house. It was one step up from a squat, I suppose. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't the best. And there I felt free. I felt like I could be more myself and I didn't have to hide so much. And things were okay for a few years. And when I was 18, I met my husband, who is still my husband. And that was amazing. He's a really lovely guy, and he did make me feel safe. And I I was good then. Things were okay. They were like plodding along. I was still fairly preoccupied with food and rules, and I still did restrict, but I wasn't visibly ill. Um, we had children quite young. Luckily, I was eating enough at the time to have like a menstrual cycle and be able to have children, because I hadn't been before. And one of my children had anaphylaxis. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a severe allergy where it's like people have it from peanuts, where you have to have an EpiPen, and you can die really quickly. It's a very serious allergy. And he had that to egg, which is in like everything. Even like a chicken nugget has egg in it. And so I became very, very conscious of what was in all the food. And I started literally making everything from scratch. And because I had quite a perfectionistic, wanting to please and wanting to do everything right mindset, I like went into it and became really, really obsessive. And this is where the orthorexia was born. And orthorexia is like, it's an eating disorder with all things for health. Everything has to be healthy, everything has to be clean and pure, nothing processed, everything organic. It's just, it became really obsessive. Everything was homemade. I even was making like yogurt from scratch and my own sourdough bread and everything. And I spent hours and hours and hours in the kitchen making everything as perfect as I could. And then, so that continued. And then after I had my third child, the orthorexia had brought back the anorexia, not really, really, really badly, but pretty badly. And I had my third son, and the day he was born, I remember I had him in the morning, and I was home from the hospital by lunchtime, and I went for a run. Wow. And then I did the school run and picked the other two up from school. And then I made the dinner, and then I walked the dogs, and then I went for another run, and I was back in my jeans within 3 days and exercising madly every day. And when I think back, I'm like, oh my God, that was so disordered. And my poor body had just given birth and needed to rest. But I got so much validation for it. People were like, you are incredible. Look how little weight you put on. You're back in your jeans in 3 days. I mean, you're amazing. You're like Superwoman, and you make everything and you do all this healthy food. And I got so much praise for it. So it just felt like I was doing the right thing, and it felt really good. And so I just continued, and the eating got less and less. And the thinner I got, the more praise I got from other people. And the more time I spent in the gym, the more praise I got. And it just validated my illness again and again and again. And this just was how I existed, really. I didn't really live because of the anorexia. I never, when you don't feel the bad emotions and the bad feelings, you don't feel the good ones either. And so I just kind of was in this weird half life where I just went through the motions every day, to please other people, really. And in lockdown, my father died. And it brought up all those emotions that I'd never processed, that I just pushed down. And I'd never learned how to process them. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what I was doing. And I actually thought I was going completely mad. It was like they were spiraling completely out of control. And I had no idea how to cope. So I was like, what do I do? How do I cope? I know, I'll eat less. So I ate less and I ate less until I stopped completely eating. And I got so sick. I was kicked out of my gym because I kept like passing out and collapsing and stuff, which I was so upset about at the time, but it was the right thing for my coach to do. Totally the right thing. And I just got to the point where at the end of the day, when everyone came home, I had no more strength to put that mask of, oh, everything's okay on. And I couldn't make up the lies of, oh, I had lunch with a friend or something like that. Oh, I had a late lunch. I don't want any dinner. And I didn't have any more strength left to lie and to make up excuses about why I was looking like I was about to die. And I reached a point where I just thought, I can't deal with this. I don't know what to do. And I thought the answer was to take my life. So I got everything in place to do so. And I was just about to do it when something deep inside me was just like, you can't leave this legacy for your children. You can't do this to them. That they would have to live with this for the rest of their lives. And that's the most selfish thing you can ever do to them. And that pulled me back. And then I just broke down and just said, I need help. I need help. And yeah, that was when I started on my recovery journey. And I was like, I found a recovery coach. I saw a therapist first, which wasn't the best thing for me. It helped a bit, and I guess that was what I needed at the time, but I was never going to recover that way. And I found this recovery coach. I heard her on a podcast and I reached out to her, and it was just like, I'm so done. I can't, it is do or die. So I'm just going to do whatever you tell me to do, whatever it takes. And I'd already stopped work by this point because I couldn't physically do it anymore. And so I just did every single thing she told me to do. And I put everything I had into recovery, and it worked. And it's a roller coaster. It's a really, really hard journey. But it's so worth it. And I've learned so much about myself and about, I had no idea that you could love yourself. I didn't know it was a possibility. I actually thought I'd been told that it was arrogant to love yourself and you shouldn't ever do it. And that was like, people hated people that loved themselves. But there's a huge difference between arrogance and self-love, which I now know, but I didn't. And being nourished, and once you're nourished, your brain can start working properly, because it can't when you're undernourished. Once you are nourished, you can start learning about self-compassion and about not criticizing yourself for every single thing, and discovering that actually you are worthy of a place in this life. And in fact, you're more than worthy. You're an incredible person who has so much to give to the world. And yeah, it just became my absolute mission and passion. And it's almost like I don't have a choice, and I don't want a choice, if I'm honest, to try and help other people who were in the position I was in, because there's so much out there that says they can't recover and that there is no hope. And quite honestly, there is. And when you feel all the feelings, even the bad ones, you know you're alive. And the good ones are incredible. And it's just, I wake up and I'm so excited for the day. And when problems come along, instead of feeling overwhelmed and unable to deal with them, just like, this is another opportunity to learn something amazing and to grow. And yeah, that's how I got where I am and why I do what I do.
Wow. What a powerful and harrowing and inspiring story. I am
Thank you.
so sorry in many ways, and yet I am so just overwhelmed. I felt all of the emotions. Just incredible. Incredible. I'm sorry you lost your father. And I'm sorry you had to go through the battle that you did. And I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. I had to go through that to be where I am today. So it was meant to be.
Absolutely.
Incredible. Incredible. Thank you, Julia.
You're so welcome.
Julia, you hit on so many things that I think even if it doesn't manifest itself into an eating disorder, thoughts and emotions and feelings that so many of us struggle with. I'm just thinking of our listeners right now. Do you have any words of advice if they're feeling some pretty strong emotions and having a connection with this? Like, what would be a healthy thing for them to do right now?
Just be with themselves while they're feeling this, and just be, it's okay. It's okay to have the feelings because you're human, and you don't need to hate yourself for them. Just accept that they're there and that's okay. And you are allowed to feel. And the worst thing that is going to happen when you feel a feeling is that you feel a feeling, and that's okay.
Absolutely. I'm curious, you hit your own breaking point and you knew you were going to reach out for help and you had started with therapy. What was it that had you seek out a recovery coach?
I started, when I decided I wanted to recover, I'd started to because I'm better now, but I was very, very perfectionistic and obsessive about everything. So I did all the research and read all the books and started listening to all the podcasts that I could find. And literally, it was like a full-time job learning all about recovery from every single angle I could do. And I heard this coach, her name's Victoria, and she's the most amazing, like an angel on earth. She really is. And I heard her on a podcast, and even though she was actually talking about binge eating, not about anorexia, and I've never had any issues with binge eating. That was not my eating disorder. I know many, many people do, but that was not where I was. It was just something she said about her mum and a codependent relationship that she'd had with her mum and her journey. And it was when she was talking, I'd never heard anyone talking about self-love. And the thought of the possibility of not hating myself was incredible. I had never dreamt that was even a possibility, to not hate myself. And so that's what made me reach out to her.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I imagine at the beginning, like before reaching out, if somebody maybe hadn't done as much research and hadn't found like that podcast with the person that they just magically connected with, they might be having some like fears or putting barriers in their way to reaching out to get the help that they need. What might you recommend for that?
Okay, so when you have an eating disorder, there will be a million barriers. There's like an eating disorder voice that's in your head the whole time, and it's telling you how awful you are and what it gives you a million rules. And so as soon as you think, I want to recover, the eating disorder voice will tell you a million reasons why you can't recover and why you shouldn't try, and that you'd fail at it anyway. And so I would say it's hard, but to try and just put the voice to one side and to feel in your heart what you want to do, and to just tell somebody that you're struggling. And that's terrifying. That's such a scary thing to do, to actually admit that you have a problem. I always used to think that to show any emotion or vulnerability was a weakness. But I have since discovered, and it's a beautiful, beautiful truth, that people respect your vulnerability. And nearly everybody, obviously there are some exceptions, but nearly everybody wants to help. And if you can just reach out and find somebody, anybody you trust, they will help you, because they want to help. And when you show somebody that you don't have it all together and that you're not this heartless, cold person that can just do everything like a robot, which is what I used to be on the outside, then people will help if you ask for help. And if you ask somebody and they don't want to help, ask somebody else, because you will find somebody that will help. And there are support groups. I mean, anyone can contact me through Instagram or through my website, and I would be very, very happy to help. Yeah, there are so many people out there. You just got to take that very, very brave step of just holding out your hand, and some wonderful person will take it and they will help you.
Let's say someone out there has a loved one who's struggling with an eating disorder. And that individual hasn't reached their rock bottom, and they're in peril, they're in crisis. What advice can you give, or do you give, to family or friends who want to help and don't know what to do or where to start?
Okay, so just love them, listen, be there for them. You can't fix somebody that doesn't want to be fixed, but you can give them the information and the options for them to reach out, and you can find the resources. There are so many resources online. Each different country has their own, like eating disorder charities that you can reach out to as well. And there is masses of information online. And on Instagram, if you put in eating disorders, you get so many people come up who are sharing their stories and can help. So you literally can't fix somebody that doesn't want to be fixed, but you can give them the tools and show them that there is hope, and let them make their choice, but just love them through it.
Wonderful.
Wonderful advice. Shifting gears slightly and connecting people to your amazing resource. Tell us about your podcast, Fly to Freedom. What's its focus? What are some of the insights and lessons you've learned? Guests you've had, maybe?
Oh, it was the scariest thing ever to start a podcast, honestly. It was like, for somebody that spent like her childhood hiding in a wardrobe, to come out and talk online in front of people. Wow. And I love it. It's amazing. So it starts off with me sharing my story. And then there's some solo episodes of, a lot of times people with an eating disorder don't believe they're sick enough to ask for recovery. And if your thoughts about food in your body are affecting your life in such a way that you can't function normally and you miss out on social occasions with friends and stuff, then you are worthy, you are sick enough, and you are worthy of seeking help. You don't have to be this emaciated, standard society image of a skeletal teenage girl, because that's actually only 7% of all people with eating disorders are underweight. You can have an eating disorder in any size body, including anorexia. You don't have to be in this incredibly low BMI category to have it. So there's information like that, and about the lies the eating disorder can tell you, how it feels to have the eating disorder voice in your head. I have some incredible guest interviews. I just published one with the doctor of perfectionism, which was very helpful, about how to overcome perfectionism. One with a spiritual medium who talks about your emotional energy. So there's some great interviews with some really, really brilliant people. And it's just really to raise awareness and give helpful tips about how to start recovery, how to reach out for help, when to reach out for help, because although I reached rock bottom, if you're waiting to reach rock bottom before you ask for help, that might be in 10 years. You might have another 10 years of not living truly, just existing in this prison. So there's nothing to say you have to reach that just because I did or some other people did. You can reach out for help at any time. And so, yeah, it's all about really helping people with some tips and things people can identify with, so they know they're not alone, because that's a big thing.
Yeah, it sounds like just raising awareness
Yeah,
about, eating disorders and how they express, like you were talking about, only 7% of people with eating disorders are in essentially a skeletal frame. Yeah. And that brings up a question around the idea of denial. Is denial a part of this particular disorder or journey
hugely.
for many people?
Denial is huge. Yeah, just not accepting that you have an eating disorder.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Like, how do
huge.
you, get someone to the place where they even see that they may be, in a disordered state?
Um, People have to want to see it for themselves, but you can say to them, look, you don't have to live such a restricted life, that you don't have to, it's not normal behavior to feel guilt and shame for eating one biscuit. Or in the case of like binge eating disorder, which is the biggest eating disorder out there, that's what most people suffer from who have an eating disorder. Binging brings a feeling of such disgust and shame and guilt and self-hatred. And in fact, binging is literally just a reaction to restriction, even if that's mental restriction, even if you're just telling yourself, I'm bad for having this, you're mentally restricting. And if you didn't restrict in any way, you wouldn't binge. So binging isn't the problem, it's the restriction, even if that's just mental. So it's all about just letting people know that if you're feeling guilt and shame and self-loathing and hatred due to any part of your eating or how you view your body, you don't have to feel like that. And there are other ways. And you can learn to love your body, because your body doesn't define you at all. I was actually doing some research for an Instagram post, and I was asking lots of my friends to describe their favorite person in the world, not like by name or anything like that, and what makes them such an amazing person. And I got people said things like, oh, loyal and caring, kind and loving, funny, spontaneous. And I think I must have asked about 15 people, and not one person said because she's thin, or because she's got beautiful hair, or because she always looks really fit. Not one person said anything about the physical appearance at all. Because nobody cares. Not really. They're all wrapped up in their own mess. So, yeah, just to let people know that there is a life outside of hating yourself, and you don't have to live like that.
Such a powerful message.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know, and we haven't even touched on your coaching.
I know. So let's pivot a little bit to that. So I love the coaching industry and all the amazing coaches we get to surround ourselves with because of stories like this, things that you have overcome, lessons you have learned. you get to a certain part of your recovery process, and all of a sudden you want to turn around and like help others. You looked ahead and you found people ahead of you on the journey. You found support groups of people where you're at on your journey, and now on your journey you are looking back and helping others. And I get goosebumps. Like, I just think so amazing. So talk to us a little bit about your coaching business. Like, how do you help people? Do you have one-on-ones, groups, things like that?
Okay, so I am an eating disorder recovery coach. I'm a qualified transformational life coach, spiritual life coach, and I'm qualified in CBTE for eating disorders.
Wow.
But I don't really use any of that, to be honest. It's all there, but it's all, I personally, and this is just my opinion, I believe that with eating disorders, whatever you can learn in a book does not tell you how it feels, does not portray the absolute terror and fear you can face over food and how people are going to judge you. And so my lived experience is my greatest tool. And I offer a package of normally about 3 months at a time, where I do one-to-ones, weekly Zoom sessions, but the magic really happens with 24/7 WhatsApp support, where literally you can be sending 40, 50 messages a day of support, encouragement, tough love, accountability. And basically, I totally believe in my clients 100% until they're ready to believe in them. And then I carry on believing in them. And I surround them with so much love that eventually my love starts to become their love, and that starts to filter into themselves, and then they start to believe in themselves and love themselves, and that's when the healing really starts.
Can you share one client example, someone who maybe overcame something very significant, or a lesson that maybe they took away that they shared with you?
Oh goodness. There's so many.
That's good to hear.
There's just looking back to where somebody's beliefs that they've been living their life by have come from. And then one of my clients discovered that she wasn't living her life by her own beliefs at all. They were all her mum's. And when she realized that, it was like a massive light bulb moment, that she wasn't even following her own path, and that she was free to choose what she wanted to believe in, and she didn't have to follow somebody else's beliefs. And that was huge. And one of my biggest turning points was when I discovered that there's a huge amount of fear with an eating disorder. You just live your life terrified. And I discovered that when you turned to face the fear, it becomes courage. And that was huge for me. That was massive.
That is massive. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I have to borrow that.
It really does, though. It's so much. It's only the anticipation of something that is scary. The actual thing isn't.
So true.
Yes. Your love is just so apparent, like, for your clients, and your commitment to helping them on their journey. It's really, really beautiful to see, Julia. You are really stepping into your purpose and
Oh, thank you.
helping so many people. So for those listening that are like, I need to connect with Julia, I want all that love, I want all that support, or I want to learn more, where can people connect with you?
Okay, so there's my podcast, which is on pretty much all the platforms, called Fly to Freedom. On Instagram, it's Julia Trehane. I have a website, which is juliatrehane.com. I also have a Facebook support group, which you can access through my website, which is free. And yeah, people are very, very welcome to come in there, and they get love and support and encouragement. And I also have a starting recovery survival guide, which is a free download that you can, again, get through my website. Yeah, or just message me through Instagram DMs. It's always me on the end of my messages. Yeah, I would love to connect.
It's amazing. All those links, we'll get them all in the show notes for everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lovely. Well, Julia, we want to extend our deepest gratitude, our thanks, our appreciation for you joining us today, for sharing your most amazing and powerful story and your love. Our listeners, I know, have been so inspired. And speaking of, we would love to hear from those listeners and find out what their takeaways were from today. I have many myself. I'm sure we'll hear from our listeners about Julia's episode. We would also really appreciate you leaving a podcast review at ratethispodcast.com/CALYL. You can do that quickly and easily from any device. Just grab the link in the show notes.
Absolutely. And then you too can be shouted out at the beginning of an episode. So I just want to echo Gwen's thanks and gratitude to you, Julia. Thank you for just everything that you're doing, all the amazingness that you're putting in the world and how you're supporting everybody. Thank you, everybody, for listening and tuning in today. Definitely go connect with Julia. And if you're feeling like you want to connect with a community that's not necessarily eating disorder focused, but more like coaching focused, and building your coaching business in a simple, aligned way with a community, then please consider joining us in the Create a Life You Love movement. And we are accepting applications, so come on over. So help us dramatically transform the coaching industry. And just go to the link, createalifeyoulovecoaching.com/membership. And like all the links, that will be in the show notes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. All right, everybody, enjoy the journey. Thank you for listening to the Create a Life You Love podcast. We would love to hear from you about your biggest takeaways. Share them with us on Facebook or Instagram at Create a Life You Love Coaching. If you love this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. If you're ready to build aligned and sustainable momentum without overwhelm and burnout, we invite you to apply for the Create a Life You Love membership on our website, createalifeyoulovecoaching.com/membership. That's it for now. Enjoy the journey.